What's going on, everybody? Top 10 Pokemon back, bringing you a top Pokemon card auctions of the week recap. Folks, I hope you had a wonderful Christmas holiday. I know I did. And today I am bringing you a plethora of Pokemon card auctions. I think you're really going to enjoy today's episode. In today's auction recap, we'll be comparing a lot of CGC 10 Pristine sales versus their PSA 10 counterparts and seeing which one of those grades truly reigned supreme this week, as well as several other amazing auctions, so please stay tuned to the very end. Today's auction recap sponsor and the sponsor of today's insane giveaway is none other than lowpopping.com. I'm sure that you already know, but if you don't, lowpopping.com is a website that features high-end investment-worthy Pokemon cards for sale, where you can trade for or make offers on just about anything you see for sale. And many of these cards you will not find anywhere else. And today, folks, they are giving away this CGC 10 Gem Mint Venusaur EX from the coveted Fire Red Leaf Green set. This card sells for over 500 clams, baby. That's right. To enter this amazing giveaway, all you gotta do is join the Low Popping Discord if you haven't already, follow Low Popping and lowpopping.market on Instagram, and then comment below letting me know what your favorite Pokemon of all time is. All the links will be in the description of this video, and we'll probably be drawing the winner in next week's auction recap. Don't miss out on your chance to pick up this amazing card. Alright folks, before we start comparing the CGCs and the PSAs, let's go over a couple of graded card sales from Surging Sparks. Starting off with this Skarmory illustration rare that in PSA 10 sold this week for $215. Here we have a Cerulege illustration rare that sold for $286. And then we have this Japanese Hydreigon EX in BGS 10 Black Label condition that sold for $730. And then we also saw this PSA 10 Special Illustration Rare Lycia's Appeal that sold for $356. Here we have three examples of the Moltres, Zapdos, and Articuno GX Stained Glass promos from the Hidden Fates Elite Trainer box. Here is a BGS 10 example that sold for $93, a CGC 10 Pristine example that sold for $91.99, and then the PSA 10 copy sold this week for $102. So all those grades are pretty close in price. I think that either one of those grades could inch the other one out at any given week. Here again is the Pikachu Van Gogh promo card hitting some insane auction sales once again. Here's a PSA 10 copy that sold for $571, while the CGC 10 Pristine example blows it out of the water, selling for $710. So CGC dominates this here Pikachu Van Gogh promo. Here is a PSA 10 Blastoise EX from the 151 set that sold for $246, while the CGC 10 Pristine copy of this card sold for $580. Here we have a CGC 10 Pristine Rayquaza VMAX from Evolving Skies that sold this week for $877, while the PSA 10 example sold for $790. Here we have a couple of Gengars that came by. Here's the Alt Art Gengar VMAX that sold as a PSA 10 for $1,073, while the PSA 10 Gengar and Mimikyu GX from Team Up sold for $1,225 this week. Here is the Umbreon VMAX in PSA 10 that sold for $2,125. And then here we have the Latios GX Alt Art from Team Up. Had two sales this week as a PSA 10, one for $3,350, the other for $3,550 for the King of Alt Arts. Here we have a couple of Black Label Japanese cards. Here is a Black Label Team Skull Grunt Pikachu that sold for $8,101, while the Black Label Charizard Poncho wearing Pikachu sold for $15,350 big ones. And then we have this signed full art Giovanni Scheme in PSA 10. Both the card and the autograph got a 10, and this card sold for $12,600. On to the vintage portion of the video, we have a base set Japanese Charizard in PSA 10 that sold for $3,131, and then we saw a CGC 10 Pristine copy of this card sell for $5,439. Here is a CGC 10 Pristine Base Set Unlimited Blastoise that sold for $2,440, while the PSA 10 copy did do a little bit better, selling for $2,750. Here is a first edition Holo Dragonite from Fossil that sold for $4,733 as a PSA 10, while the first edition Dark Dragonite Holo from Team Rocket sold for $3,150. Here is a Japanese Crystal Charizard in first edition that sold as a PSA 10 for $7,350. We have this Charizard from EX Dragon that sold as a PSA 10 for $1,851. A couple of sales from the EX era. Here is a Rockets Sneasel EX, sold as a PSA 10 for $940. And then here is a Dark Dragonite Cosmos Holo in PSA 10 that sold for $2,850. A couple of PSA 10 Level X cards came by. You don't see PSA 10 Level X cards very often. They are often very, very low pop. Here's an Electivire Level X in PSA 10 that sold for $695. Here is a Luxray Level X that sold for $1,400, and then an Empoleon Level X that sold for $2,425. And then we saw a couple of high-value Gold Stars. Here is a Registeel Gold Star in PSA 10 that sold for $3,100. This Regice Gold Star that sold for $3,301. And then here is a PSA 10 Japanese Charizard Gold Star card that sold for $13,251. And then, folks, the final auction on eBay is this massive lot of vintage WotC cards. These are all raw cards. I think there are like over 150 holos in this particular lot. I took a few snapshots here for you to see, but this entire lot sold for $9,888. And there is a lot of eye candy. I think there's even a few booster packs thrown in there, a few base set Charizards at the end. So yeah, what do you think of that, folks? I think that's worth almost $10,000. Pretty impressive looking. On to the Fanatics Collect weekly auction block. We saw a couple of CGC 10 reverse holos from Legendary Collection. Here is a Tentacruel reverse holo that sold for $960. Here is the Nidoqueen reverse holo that sold for $1,080, along with this reverse holo Kabutops that also sold for $1,080. Here's a reverse holo Abra that sold for $1,680. And then this reverse holo Machamp sold for $2,760. Here is a PSA 10 reverse holo Eevee from Legendary Collection that sold for $3,360, while the reverse holo Pikachu, also in PSA 10, sold for $5,880. A couple of EX cards. Here is a PSA 10 Celebi EX from Unseen Forces, sold for $4,680, while this Lugia EX from Unseen Forces sold for $4,680 as well. Here we have a BGS 9.5 first edition Lugia from Neo Genesis, sold for $4,320. And then here is the complete Japanese 151 Master Ball set, all in PSA 10, that sold for $6,900 this week. So that is 126 cards total. Here is a CGC 10 Pristine Charizard poncho wearing Pikachu that sold for $4,080, while the BGS 10 Pristine copy sold for $6,900. Here is a Spanish XY Art Academy Pikachu card in PSA 9, sold for $5,520, while this Art Academy Pikachu sold for $7,800, and this one here sold for $11,700, but this one here is a PSA 10. We saw the Crystal Charizard from Skyridge come by as a PSA 10 that sold this week for $15,000. And the past few weeks we've seen sales a little bit higher than this, $17,000 to $18,000, but this week it did sell for $15,000. And then on to the alt auction block, we have this PSA 10 Holo Gengar from Skyridge, sold for $7,504. Here is a PSA 10 Shining Gyarados from Neo Revelation, sold for $9,301 as a PSA 10. And then we saw a couple of the playtest cards. Here is a CGC 10 Dragonite Japanese beta playtest card that sold for $5,910. A CGC 10 Raichu Alpha playtest card sold for $7,012. And then this CGC 10 Delta Playtest Squirtle sold for $7,502. Here is a BGS 9 2010 Japanese World Finalist Prize Master Key card that sold for $19,200. And then here we saw a 2019 World's Championship promo number 3 trainer card that sold for $28,200. And then we're going to do one more comparison to finish off this video. We will be comparing this CGC 10 Pristine Gold Star Torchic from EX Team Rocket Returns. This card sold for $21,875. However, this CGC 10 example got bent over by the PSA 10 example as it sold for $35,000. That concludes the auction recap, folks. Don't forget to throw your name in the hat so you can have a chance to get this Venusaur EX from Fire Red Leaf Green. You don't want to miss out. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll catch you all in my next one.